There's a growing meme online that the new 5G network is going to have serious implications for our health. I even found articles that stated it was like turning on a microwave, leaving the door open and having this on for the rest of our lives. Instinctively, we know this isn't true. We know that if we were to turn on a microwave and stick our hand in there, we would know about it pretty quickly. So what are the purposes of these claims? I think these statements have the potential to be quite harmful, cause panic and anxiety, and also accelerate the spread of misinformation. In this video, I'm going to evaluate the research and to see if there's anything to back up these claims and to see if 5G is something we need to be worried about. So what is 5G? 5G is the fifth generation of wireless technology that's going to be replacing our current 4G system. 5G uses a slightly higher frequency on the electromagnetic spectrum than the current 4G. So other things on this spectrum are things ranging from radio waves, these are longer waves, and then they sort of get narrower as you go up. So then this can go on to things like cell phones, then the 4G, 5G networks, then onto microwaves, and then you have the light from either the sun or a light bulb, and then this goes on to things like X-rays, right up to the scale onto things from radioactive sources. So the new 5G network ranges between 24 gigahertz and 72 gigahertz. The gigahertz is just a unit of frequency, so all this means it's a billion waves within a second. This should enable a whole host of new technologies to become available. Most obviously are ones like autonomous driving, new advances in search and rescue, medical technologies. So there are some drawbacks to the new 5G network, partly because the signal that the 5G uses is slightly weaker. And so to strengthen this, we need to place many masts interspersed between our cities and our towns to make sure that we have complete coverage. The signal or the frequency that 5G uses is easily interrupted by the atmosphere, walls, objects, so we almost need line of sight to get a good coverage. Okay, so what's the concern? The concern is that the new 5G network, the frequency it uses, may have harmful effects on our health. So I'll put a diagram here just so you can see for reference all the things that we use day to day that emit this type of radiation. This is known as radio frequency radiation. Now, there are many things on this that can be potentially helpful, but most of them actually aren't. So scientists split these into two different groups, ionizing and non-ionizing. So the ionizing are things like X-rays or radiation from radioactive material. Now these are dangerous to our health, and they're dangerous to our health because they have the ability to break down molecular bonds and cause cancer. The other type are non-ionizing. So these are things like radio waves, the radiation that is emitted from our cell phones. It also could be even from a light bulb or the sun. These may warm up our tissues, especially in the higher end of this frequency, but still don't have any adverse effects on our health. Because we know that a light bulb is not going to cause cancer. It may, if we put our hand close to it, we may feel a slight increase in temperature, but that's it. Okay, so I wanted to start by saying there are no quality studies looking specifically at 5G. So 5G does have a certain amount of overlap with the current 4G. Also, there have been a lot of studies that have looked at cell phones, which is very close to this type of frequency, and that's something I'm going to look at. Now, a lot of these websites that claim that 5G can have adverse effects on our health quote a particular study that was a very large-scale study. So the scientists exposed rats to radio frequency radiation. They exposed their whole body and for 16 hours a day. They did this over the rats' lifetime for roughly about 2 years. They found that male rats that were exposed to this radio frequency radiation developed things like heart tumors, certain brain tumors. These were things like gliomas. Now, this was a slight increase. I think it was roughly about 2 to 3%. Now, on the face of it, you think, well, yes, well, this sounds like the radio frequency radiation caused these tumors. But there was a reason that I mentioned male rats, because in this study, they noted that they only found this present in male rats and not the female rats. So why would the female rats not develop these cancers? Also, that they found that the rats that were actually exposed to the radio frequency radiation, so the male rats specifically, actually lived longer than the rats that weren't exposed to any radiation. So if we were expecting that these radio frequency radiation to have an effect on our bodies, this would be the opposite. So it may be that actually because the rat lived longer, that they were allowed or able to develop these cancers. And like I said, it was only a small increase in the instances of these tumours. Another large-scale study conducted by the World Health Organization examined the link between radiofrequency radiation from a cell phone and its link to certain brain cancers. They concluded that there was no statistical significant data to suggest that there is a link. Now, there were some limitations to this study, so they had people self-reporting on their cell phone usage. So as we know that people can be quite subjective or remember things incorrectly, and they did note that sometimes the amount that people reported were almost impossible, that they could be on the phone that much. They also found that the people that use cell phones infrequently had less instances of brain cancer than the people that didn't use phones at all. Once again, this is not what we would expect if we thought that radiofrequency radiation caused brain cancer. I will put a link in the description box below to the World Health Organization website that goes through this study and many other studies that they found that there was no strong link between radiofrequency radiation and other types of cancers. Okay, so should we be worried? Now, this is quite hard to answer. There are many aspects, there's many factors that affect our health, and I don't think that we should just be complacent and we should just say, okay, yeah, 5G absolutely fine. We need quality research to be done, so we need to put pressure on the government, regulators, cell phone companies to make sure that they are conducting this research so we know more about 5G and any potential effects on our health. But so far, there isn't much to suggest that there even may be a link. But once again, I think that we still need to look into this. So there was a letter that was written to the EU by 180 scientists and doctors that advised for them to put a halt to the new auctioning of the 5G network because of a lack of knowledge or possible effects that it has on our health. But now, because we're outside the EU, we might have to rely on our own government for that now. But I do agree with them to some extent that we maybe need to reevaluate a little bit more about the new current 5G network. Now, a little bit more of a comforting comparison that I found was that if you look at the instances of brain cancers in places like America, Australia, and in Europe, you find that actually instances have been quite consistent. So I'll put a graph here just to show you. Mobile phones have been in use since the mid-80s, and if there was a correlation between cell phone usage and cancers, we should be seeing this now. And as you can see, there isn't any increase. The only exception is in the UK, where there's been a 36% increase in brain cancers. Because we all across those countries use mobile phones, it's unlikely to be the cause, but it's interesting to wonder why ours are increasing so much, but there must be many other factors that is causing that. And as I mentioned before, the new 5G network uses a certain radio frequency that is just, they're called millimeter waves, and these aren't good at penetrating surfaces, so like walls, our skin. We can draw some comfort that even if it does go onto us, that it's not going to go in deep. So look, it may affect our skin, but unlikely our deeper organs and structures, just because it can't penetrate that deep. As so many people say nowadays, they're finding cancer for everything. And I think there's a little bit of truth in that. Because cancer is so complex and there's so many different diseases that are involved in cancer, and there's so many potential carcinogens that can cause those cancers, if we look closely enough or hard enough, then sometimes we find a weak link or mixed links between different cancers. Before everyone becomes too anxious and very stressed about the new 5G network, I think the main thing to take home is context. So we know that too much sun can cause skin cancer. We know that too much alcohol can cause liver cancer. So for me, I will continue working on these aspects of my health because I know that if I reduce my sun exposure, if I reduce my alcohol intake, that these are dramatically going to reduce my chances of cancer. And I'm going to stop worrying about 5G at this stage because, like I said, if there is a link, it's fairly weak. Okay, so I hope you all enjoyed the video. I'll put a survey here so people can vote on whether they think 5G poses a risk for skin cancer. I'll put yes, no, or not sure. Also remember to subscribe to the channel and like the video. It really does help. Thanks very much for watching.